Back in the 1980s, private equity was dominated by leveraged buyouts, when private equity firms would buy out an entire firm, put a lot of leverage on the deal, and many times replace management. Well, times have changed, and minority investments in private companies have been becoming more and more popular. In 1999, the private equity firm Inflexion was the first private equity firm in Europe to have a private equity fund that exclusively invested in minority stakes. That fund was called Partnership Capital. Well, this year, Inflexion sold a minority stake in itself as part of a GP stakes investment by Hunter Point Capital. In our August 2023 video newsletter called Mink Sites, which you should subscribe to in the link in the description below if you don't already receive it, we took a deep dive into the Inflexion Hunter Point Capital deal. And we are happy to share it with you here. So stay tuned for our Mink Sites video newsletter. In this edition of Mink Sites, we will walk you through the Inflexion Deal, a recent deal where Hunter Point Capital is acquiring the private equity firm Inflexion. We'll go through the history of Inflexion, followed by the details of the deal, and then we will analyze the deal. So let's get started with the history of Inflexion. Back in 1999, John Hartz and Simon Turner founded Inflexion to invest in established, fast-growing businesses across a range of sectors. In 2003, Inflexion raised its first buyout fund. And just 3 years later, in 2006, it raised its second buyout fund. Since then, every 2 or 3 years, Inflexion has raised a new fund in one of its 3 core strategies. Number 1, buyout, a mid-market private equity strategy that invests in companies that have an enterprise value of up to £1 billion. Number 2, partnership capital, a strategy that is dedicated to minority investments. These investments are only for 15 to 50% of the business so that a management team can retain control while growing the business. And number 3, enterprise, a lower mid-market strategy that invests in companies that have an enterprise value of less than £150 million. In 2018, after raising its first partnership capital fund a few years earlier, Inflexion raised Inflexion Partnership Capital Fund 2. In 2019, Inflexion raised Inflexion Enterprise Fund 5. And at the same time, in 2019, Inflexion raised Inflexion Supplemental Fund 5, which is a co-investment fund that is used to invest alongside its buyout funds and partnership capital funds. In 2022, Inflexion raised its 6th buyout fund, Inflexion Buyout Fund 6, and in 2023, at the time of the deal that we will talk about in this video, Inflexion, through its 3 main strategies of buyout, partnership capital, and enterprise, has backed over 100 businesses, has made over 440 portfolio acquisitions, and has its presence in 160 countries around the world. So let's move on to the details of the deal. On April 6, 2023, it was announced that Hunter Point Capital invested a minority stake in Inflexion. Do you remember Hunter Point Capital from our newsletter that covered its investment in Vistria a few months ago? Well, to remind you, Hunter Point Capital is a private investment firm that was founded by Bennett Goodman. Goodman previously co-founded GSO Capital Partners, which is now Blackstone Credit. Unfortunately, this deal with Inflexion didn't have many other details disclosed, but we have lots of analysis to do, so let's analyze the deal. Well, this is another example of a GP stakes investment. In addition to Hunter Point Capital, there have been many other firms buying GP stakes, such as Blue Owl's Dial Capital, Blackstone GP stakes, and Goldman Sachs's Peters Hill Partners. A GP stakes investment is a minority stake in a private equity firm, a GP. The reason for this investment is to passively back management teams of these private equity firms. Well, in this newsletter, we talked about the private equity firm Inflexion. Inflexion is the first private equity firm in Europe to launch a fund that's dedicated to minority investing in businesses through its partnership capital fund. Since the strategy started, Inflexion's partnership capital funds have made 20 minority partnership investments as of April 2023. Now, is minority investing a good strategy? Well, in times of uncertainty, such as the current global environment in 2023, I believe it is. Companies need external guidance and support in uncertain times. But because valuations are lower during these times, many companies do not want to sell their entire businesses at depreciated values. Investors, if you could add value through past experiences, connections, and expertise to help a management team grow its business, a minority investment, especially in uncertain times, can create a win-win scenario for both the company and you, the investor.